Well, it's very lovely of you to join me, Toby Hadoke, here at Happy Times and Places, where I watch an episode of Doctor Who chosen by a friend of mine, commentate along, and see if I can identify their favourite thing about it.
Hello Toby, it's Mark Wright here. I'm a writer. I write lots of things about Doctor Who. For 20 years I've been writing and producing various projects for Big Finish Productions. I write for Doctor Who magazine and the Doctor Who figurine collection. And I was a co-editor on Doctor Who The Complete History across 90 volumes. And with Cavan Scott, I co-wrote the official Doctor Who miscellany, Whoology, to time with the 50th anniversary. The story that I have picked for you is The Ambassadors of Death.
Hello, everybody. I'm waiting for my 3 missing astronauts to come round and have a cup of tea and radiation. It's Toby Hadoke here, thoroughly enjoying The Ambassadors of Death, as does everybody who seems to be watching along with me, which is something you can do if you are a member of the Patreon, which I normally wait till the end to plug because it feels to me to be unseemly to do otherwise, but actually I've got to get over that and occasionally mention it at the top of the show. If you're listening via any of the free apps, you can get early access from as little as £3 a month, and that way sometimes, if I haven't had the wherewithal or organisational skills to get a whole story watched and recorded in one go, you can sort of follow along because everybody on the Patreon has heard what I've made of episode 3 before I've even recorded what I'm about to do now, episode 4. And as you'll have heard in previous instalments, that means I've had a few comments that I've been able to pepper with this. But I'm fitting this one in on a sunny afternoon while the other half has sneaked out. So I'm going to get straight on with the episode also because I don't want to leave Liz Shaw hanging. I'm not in a frankly, in quite a masculine manner, off the side of a weir. And I only know what a weir is because Liz Shaw hangs off one at the end of episode 3 of The Ambassadors of Death. So here we go. Charlie Slater, Derek Martin, who is still with us, but he's not credited. So that's why episode 3 of The Ambassadors of Death has no credited living actors in it. Episode 4, however, well, let's see what happens there. And I think I might have something to tell you about this episode, which previously to me had a question mark over it. But that question mark has since vanished. And it has not been replaced by a different question mark in the same sort of astronaut suit. It's not that sort of vanishing. It's just, it is a riddle that has been solved. Not a riddle, even. Just a mystery. An unknown that is now known. Unlike a lot of the unknowns in The Ambassadors of Death, which currently in episode 4 is a very murky tale of cross and double cross and who's good and who's bad, and in some cases, what the hell is going on? But that's why it is an intriguing tale that is proving to be very popular amongst the inhabitants of Patronville, and I hope, therefore, is equally popular amongst those of you who've pulled into iTunes Avenue to have a listen, or have put your feet up in Spotify lay-by in order to avail yourself of the ambassadors pressing their hands against your glass and trying to get your attention. So anyway, let's have a look to see how Liz Shaw gets out of that one, and to see if what's going on in the upper echelons of the British establishment gets any clearer when the Doctor investigates what is happening with the Ambassadors of Death. It's started. I don't know if you can hear that. I try, I'm watching along, but the nature of these podcasts is that sometimes I think the accompanying soundtrack of the episode is louder than others, depending on where my speaker is placed, and indeed which speaker I'm using, because I have a variety of different ways of digesting this. I have a better speaker, which is one of those movable ones, but I definitely didn't use it last time because I couldn't reach it, and I set myself up for about the 5th time. So I just use the speakers coming out of my projector because I'm watching this on a big grey wall So there we go. There's and they do it slightly differently. The recap, the title pops in at a slightly later juncture than the titles crashed in for the cliffhanger. But that's and that's the same. You know, the episode 2 also has a slightly different take, doesn't it, for the recap than for the. This is not a different take. It was just a slightly extended sequence. It's an excellent stunt though. Well done, Roy Scammell. Well done, Liz's hat, for staying on throughout all of that action-packed shenanigans. But again, it's Michael Ferguson choosing a good location, making things look good, just making those sequences that actually have very, very little to do with the plot sing just a little bit more. I do like the fact that there's an extra sort of frisson given to these scenes, which again are, could be done much more economically, but we live with them because I love that, because he's nasty, but he's not sadistic. He's sort of quite pragmatically cruel, and yet he's still really likable. I love Reegan. I love William Dysart. But yeah, I think those scenes are good because you've got Reegan sort of pushing Liz about, but her slightly needling him, and then they've both got a slightly different relationship with Lennox, who's a disappointed man, and both Liz and Reegan treat that aspect of him very differently. But it means that there's a really useful dynamic there that makes those scenes much more than exposition. Pertwee fantastic. He sees through all the crap, which I rather like, which is good because it makes Carrington at the moment seem slightly too credulous rather than necessarily bad, because we don't know that he has this sort of paranoid motivation for doing what he's doing. So at the moment it seems like Reegan's the bad guy, and Carrington is just another of those authority figures, either military or governmental, in this case military, who've got the wrong end of the stick, and the Doctor needs to disabuse them of the conclusions, the incorrect conclusions that they have reached. And I like his sort of patronising, don't forget foreign combs, and don't forget hair combs and all of that, which is rather fun. And it's been pointed out by one of my correspondents that Pertwee is a bit arrogant, but a bit like Reegan is nasty, but you kind of like him. Pertwee, because his arrogance is directed largely in the right direction and to great effect, is not sometimes later the Third Doctor, he's the victim of his own faults. His own faults lead to his punishment. There's a hubristic element to the Doctor's ambition and arrogance and all of that. Whereas here, it's generally he's not being arrogant in order for the writers then to give him his comeuppance. His arrogance is because he's correct, and he's cutting through the machinations of people that he thinks are either stupid or malicious. And I like that sort of sense of, that sort of sense of fun he has with Taltalian, who's quite a sort of wretched fellow, isn't he? He's he's an unhappy character. He's being sort of, as far as we're aware, he's done all the bad things he's done under duress, and that he's a principled scientist. As I say, he's not a character that is as fascinating as Reegan or as Cornish or as Carrington. So I feel slightly sorry for Robert Corddry, because actually, the manipulated, conflicted man is quite a good character, but I don't know, for whatever reason, he doesn't excite my interest quite as much, and I don't actually mind when he's removed from the story. But Pert was brilliant here. He's got that. What I love about him is he's got the measure of everybody. Again, in future things, he'll make some sort of pronouncement and be shown to have done so too quickly, or to have been slightly too arrogant. Whereas here, that arrogance is motivated by the fact that he's impatient. He's the alien whose mind is working, 10 times the speed of everybody else's, and he hasn't got time to hang around with, these people who are either, as he sees them, stupid or duplicitous. John Lord going out there. He is the surviving member of the cast of this episode. I only discovered this relatively recently, and it's not really my discovery. I have friends and colleagues. I'm on a little WhatsApp exchange with Stephen Griffiths and Ben Jolly, who are minded like me to keep an eye out and to try and solve the mysteries of the small list of actors that we have that we don't know anything about. And John Lord is also a yeti in the Web of Fear. But I think both Ben and Stephen have been in touch with a guy who is a relative of John Lord and has finally actually done an interview with him. He's 90, I think, 91, 92, looking good, and had remembered being in Doctor Who and has a credit here. So the interview has been done, so that's quite good, and I think he remembered quite a lot of things. But he's flying the flag for the cast of the Ambassadors of Death, so good for him. I'd love to get him on my list of people I might get to meet, but somebody has done the important work of getting him on record, and let's see if he's tempted to do any other things. I love the bit where Cyril Shaps leaves the key and says, "Oh, I lost my key." I think that's really nice. It's he's a good character, Lennox. The good man who's been kind of forced by circumstance to work for Reegan, which he's not happy about, and so he's conflicted, but ultimately he's a decent man, and Cyril Shaps is very good at that. I think he's much better in this than he is in Tomb of the Cybermen, where he has to largely be a frightened sort of vole, and it's less comfortable material to play with, whereas here he has a kind of wounded dignity about him that I think is beautiful. It's a fantastic cast, this one, and all the characters, because with the 7 episodes, I always feel with the 7 episodes, if you've got 6 episodes, you can kind of pad a couple, whereas if you've got 7, you need to introduce another element, and that's, to me, you can't have 3 padded episodes really, so you need another string of characters or another plot development. So in the Silurians you get the plague, in Inferno you get the alternative world, and here you get various things, the shenanigans with Reegan, the trip into space, and various extra bits of double crossing, which makes me feel that Ambassadors never feels like it's treading water. And because Ferguson is such a good director, there are protracted sequences with no dialogue, which again are fairly unnecessary to the plot. But the money's on screen, and that's adding to the pace and the scale and all those other things. Which is why I think this is such a terrific story, and which is why I'm happy to sing its praises. And try as I might, I mean, I will have no effect whatsoever, to rescue it from its reputation as being an underachiever. Now, I never hitchhiked like this. I never, moved my thumb like Liz Shaw does. You just sort of hold your thumb out and wait for somebody to pull up. But maybe that's a 70s thing, or maybe Caroline Johns never hitchhiked. I don't know. But this is something that has caused me great disquiet, and I need to get over myself. In the Doctor Who Discontinuity Guide, they say, get in, Miss Shaw. They say Taltalian only uses his French accent in the studio. which is true. Because, well, if you like, because get in, Miss Shaw, those 4 words he says on film, you could say, is he not doing the accent? I mean, it's very hard with 4 syllables. Get in, Miss Shaw. So what's he supposed to do? Get in, Miss Shaw. So that was more sort of Italian. Get in, Miss Shaw. But whatever. If we're to say that is a correct observation, which I think you can make from that. I do like his tweed jacket, by the way. I like a tweed jacket. People give me their dead grandparents' tweed jackets. I'm that kind of guy. And I've got shirts like that as well. I cosplay as Dr. Taltalian. But that's then found its way onto other people's books or articles, or for instance, where people say, Taltalian speaks in a French accent in some scenes and not in others. And I got so annoyed when I read that, because I'd myself made in my own head, the discontinuity guide's observation, he might not be doing his French accent in that, and he might have decided to do that after the film sequences had been completed. But he's only in one film sequence. Or he only speaks in one film sequence. No, he's only in one film sequence. And then before getting to the studio, they've gone, do it as French. Okay, what about that line? It's one line, you'll be fine. But because the discontinuity guide, I think deliberately make it sound like a bigger thing than it is, because they say he doesn't speak in his French accent on film. Well, yeah, one line. But on film makes it sound much more of an aberration than it actually is. By only giving a certain amount of information about where his French accent isn't. But then people who don't, when they write their articles and books, then do that research for themselves or come to that conclusion themselves, they phrase it differently, not realising that the discontinuity guide has actually been deliberately, I think, opaque in order to make it sound like more of a story, if you like. It's a sort of tabloidy thing, really. I'm not saying they're doing a bad thing. It makes a much more exciting read than saying there's one line that Taltalian does on film where it could be that he's not doing his French accent because he hasn't decided to do that yet, because they haven't done the studio rehearsals. Sounds much more exciting to go, in the film sequences, he forgets his French accent. So then when subsequent people go, Taltalian speaks in a French accent in some scenes and not in others, because they haven't realised what the implication was of on film, because they don't know, they haven't, as I say, rewatched with enough scrutiny to go, actually on film for Taltalian means one scene. And I got so annoyed with them, and in fact, I think maybe in Running Through Corridors or something I've written, I've gone, and I've made this point, I've laboured this point, perhaps as much as I'm labouring it now. I mean, I'm labouring it again, but to a slightly different conclusion, because when I was writing that book, I felt the need, because, I'd not written... I wasn't asked to write much. I wasn't asked to contribute to much. I wanted to sort of make my point of going, look, I know my stuff, and these people haven't even been bothered to check that, and they've criticised an actor for actually something that's not as big a thing as it is. And these people writing their books and articles, and they haven't done their research properly. Whereas actually the people writing the books and the articles might have just been making a throwaway comment and have phrased it the way that they've phrased it to make the same point. But I imputed motive, you see, or I was irked by what I saw as a lack of knowledge being paraded, whereas actually it's just people who are enthusiastic about a thing, writing about a thing, and maybe not communicating it in a fully accurate way or whatever. The point is, it doesn't really matter, and I should have got over myself and not worried about that. But whilst also making the point of going, when the discontinuity guide said that, they did kind of missell it. It's a fabulous book, and I love it. But they missold it to make it sound like a more exciting thing than it actually is. As it is, Taltalian, troubles will be over. I love Reegan. He's a swine, but he's so likable. And I think the story does. I think Taltalian is. He's been painted into a corner, really, and I kind of think the story doesn't really need him anymore. So, as a viewer, and because it's, as I say, because Robert Corcoran, who's a perfectly decent actor, is doing it in that accent and is saddled with that false beard. I think if you're a fan of this story, or certainly might go yeah, I think Taltalian, because he doesn't really know which way he's going and he's in an uncomfortable position. I think it's an easier watch once we get rid of him. But anyway, so yes. So my point is that seemed like such a big thing. That whole, it's actually only 4 lines that Taltalian has on film. That is now so spectacularly unimportant. It's a lesson in, but it was a friend of mine gave me the phrase, when I'd had an argument with her about something. Again, when I got unnecessarily wound up about something, she said, we all have our hills to die on, but just be careful about yours, because they can, seem really odd to other people. And cause unnecessary conflict. And it's absolutely right. I should have just been perfectly happy for those books to trot out an extrapolation of the Discontinuity Guide's phraseology and just gone, oh, yeah, I can see what they're doing there, but that's not quite what it is. It really doesn't matter. But I think it all boils down to the fact that I'd noticed myself, but was not in a position to put that anywhere when I noticed it, because I wasn't part of fandom, I wasn't writing articles, nobody was asking me to broadcast or write books. So it actually came from that. I remember in the book of this, which I read subsequently, Terence Dix, I think, puts "somebody screamed" there in order to show that it's, the scene leaves us not knowing who screamed, because it's filmed quite close. One suspects it would have made a bit of a mess of Taltalian. And it's not been, seeing as Reegan is a pretty efficient and ruthless guy, it's the Doctor survives because Taltalian is in the way. Although I think that is actually explained. I like the way we could do without the back chat. He's written so plausibly. He just has little lines that he chucks in that just make him seem to be cut from a different cloth from your average Doctor Who heavy or villain. So he's mean, but he's charismatic. He's vicious, but he's charming. He's villainous, but he's kind of down to earth and believable. He's just a brilliant creation, Reegan. I think an under-celebrated creation who excels in every department. And who, as I say, is and we have a lot of really good villains who are kind of, all in a similar mould, if you like. And there are, other charismatic heavies in Doctor Who, but I think there's an X factor to Reegan. I also think Mailer has it in slightly different. He's not as Mailer in Mind of Evil is not charming like Reegan is, but I'm sure when I cover that I will eulogise William Marlowe, who I think does genuine sort of tough guy stuff really, really well. John Abernethy, I think I've been holding off mentioning John Abernethy because I adore him so. But I refer you to Moth's Ate My Doctor Who Scarf by One Man Show, in which he is a long featured subject who then became relevant to the show as I toured it as well. So I've been in contact with two of his. So I think he only has 2 sons. Sebastian Abernethy, who is an actor who came to see Moth's Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, but because the guy in the tech booth knew him, and when we were going through it, and he realised that John Abernethy was part of the show, he said, "Oh, it's his son Sebastian. We know him," and so it got him down, and he was chuffed to bits. And I've also since been in touch with his son Daniel Abernethy, who was a definitive Frankenfurter on the Australian stage in the Rocky Horror Show, I think, and has directed the Rocky Horror Show. He's an actor and a singer. So the Abernethy gene is strong, but as I say, he also features quite strongly in Moth's Ate My Doctor Who Scarf. as a running theme, as something that was just based on who I'd used to illustrate my love of character actors. But he's one that I've always had a sort of connection with. I adore this sequence. I think I saw this sequence before taking home my friend Andy's copy of the video to watch the whole thing. I'm pretty sure he showed me this as an indication of how brilliant Ambassadors was. That is absolutely fantastic film camera work with the beautiful lens flare, the silhouette. This is Max Faulkner, who's an excellent actor and stuntman, and that's brilliant. I love the way the radiation transmits its way across the metal barrier and electrocutes him. The musical score is also unsettling, but that silhouetted alien sequence with the lens flare is absolutely fantastic. And I think when I was briefly part of a Doctor Who group, we used to have sort of meetings where we'd do trailers for the next meeting, and people would vote which episode to watch next time. And I remember we used that sequence to sort of try to get people to vote for Ambassadors of Death episode 4, and I think indeed they did. And Max Faulkner, who wasn't a name that had registered hugely with me when I'd been reading all of the cast lists. But then when I started getting the episodes, I was like, oh, it's that guy again. And I got Android Invasion quite early, and he features quite heavily in that. And he was suddenly on my list of people that I would have loved to have interviewed and spoke to. But Derek Ware told me that Max wasn't somebody who liked to look back. And I presume others tried as well, but because he was certainly still around at the dawn of the DVD range, but nobody ever got word from Max, sadly, which is a shame, because he was, as I say, he's a good, he's a stuntman who's probably the best actor of the stuntmen, and features quite heavily, particularly during the Pertwee era, doing stunts and small parts. So. He famously dies twice in episode 6 of The Monster of Peladon. But I love that sequence. And, the film cameraman is A.A. Englander, isn't it? Who was the film cameraman on Quatermass and the Pit. One of the great Toby Englander, known as Toby, because actually one of the A's stands for Adolf, but legendary film cameraman. So here's the demise of Quinlan, who's again, it's almost like it's I think one of the reasons I like this story is because the two performances and I feel sorry for Robert Corddry, because as I say, I'm not sure he does an awful lot wrong, but the two performances that were kind of slightly undermining proceedings for me, Taltalian and his French accent and stick-on beard, and Quinlan and his slightly monotone delivery, both get killed off in this episode. So it's almost like the story is going, yeah, things aren't. We're doing great work here, but there's a couple of elements that aren't achieving the excellence of everything that's around. So let's kill them off. So again, look, Reegan, Lennox. Now Cyril Shaps doesn't always stay in order of appearance. I think in one of the later episodes he drops down a little bit. But Reegan, Lennox. It's featured guest cast in order of appearance. And of that guest cast, only John Lord, sadly, is still with us. Oh, A. Englander and Tony Lego are the film cameramen. Both of them excellent film cameramen. Tony Lego was actually the partner of Paddy Russell, who was production manager, assistant floor manager, and all sorts of other things on Quatermass. And Peter Day, the special effects guy there, who sadly died last year, was also visual effects assistant. He was the first, I think, or one of the first two visual effects assistants of the BBC Visual Effects Department when it was after it was founded, and briefly consisted solely of Jack Kine and Bernard Wilkie. So lots of Quatermass connections with Ambassadors of Death, not least the fact it's a story about 3 astronauts who go into space and then come back slightly different and then vanish, and then when they do come back slightly different from what had been expected. So, and there's also international intrigue and government level interference and all sorts of other things. Season 7 is beautifully Quatermassy, which of course gives it an added frisson for me. I love that episode of The Ambassadors of Death because it contains so many things that I like, and because it continues to intrigue and surprise and be of great quality. There's lots of scenes of people chatting in rooms, but the people chatting are people like, the forlorn but, slightly gutsy, despite himself, Lennox, the charming, cruel but likeable, pragmatic, blunt, but witty, but effortless. The fact that it's effortless, he's not trying to be. His jokes land because they're not jokes, but because he's just a naturally charismatic person who gets the odd little line that natural charisma lends itself to. Reegan, who's deserving of his top billing, even though it's only there by default because he's the first to appear to speak of the main guest cast. Pertwee on fine form. I always undervalue Pertwee, I think, because I've sort of always taken him for granted because I saw him early and liked him early in 5 Faces of Doctor Who. I loved his costumes, the velvet jackets and the black leather gloves. He does black leather gloves so well. But because he wasn't as... when I realised Troughton was my favourite Doctor, Pertwee was always like, yeah, well, Pertwee's good. But then when I started to collect the older stories, I found a lot of the Pertwee era a bit of a disappointment because it didn't fit my image of the books. And and Pertwee metamorphoses, doesn't he, as Terence Dix so often said, he got a bit more bouffant, a bit more frilly, a bit more camp. And I think I found the edgier version a bit more interesting. But also... there is a danger that he becomes quite unlikable and the way he's sort of rude to Jo, the way he can be quite pompous without there being much of a punchline apart from to prick his pomposity, and you sort of go, so are we making the Doctor a dick now? Whereas actually his pompousness here in season 7, yeah, there is the odd occasion, like when he's rude to Ralph Cornish in episode 1 and then has to backtrack when he finds out who he is. But that's actually quite funny. And Ronald Allen maintains his dignity throughout. But again, it's all suggestive rather than just of this sort of arse. Or this, this establishment boor. It's of an alien mind who hasn't got time for the niceties of humanity because there's bloody work to do, and he needs to get these small-brained humans with their useless backward computers to do the stuff that he needs to work out that he can't quite work out in his head because he needs technology to do it, but he needs better technology and better allies than he's got, but he's stuck on 20th century Earth. Plus, his mind is racing to keep ahead of the people that he's interacting with, some of whom are stupid and some of whom have other agendas. And so he's got all of that going on. So that is the gateway, therefore, to his sort of testiness, which really kind of works. And especially, I love the fact that, he's one step ahead and slightly patronising about oh yes, they're foreign agents with combs. What a load of old codswallop piece, sort of saying, and putting the pencil in Taltalian's back and sort of being sort of dryly amused, and not giving him too much of a hard time, but also firing a shot across the bow as if to say, I've got your number, pal. But anyway, I'm going to be perfectly amiable towards you because of it almost, you're not a threat, and that unsettles Taltalian, and that's very clever manipulation and interaction from the Doctor. And then of course the brilliant bit where somebody threatens Liz and he just goes, well, I'm going to carry on working because they'll never know, will they, unless, basically subtext, you tell them. That is brilliant Doctor stuff. I love how Pertwee is in this story, and as I say, I think I've sometimes underestimated or under-celebrated Pertwee in my own head canon. So bravo, John Pertwee. I think he's brilliant in this. I love his Doctor in this, even though I do acknowledge that there are sometimes issues with the third Doctor in the likability stakes, but no, I think he's great. I love him, and he looks like Doctor Who, and he owns Doctor Who, and he's a guy who had not done much drama in an electronic TV studio. He was the funny radio voice man. or and yeah, I know he'd done films and things like that. But the electronic TV studio is a very different medium in which to act from radio and from film, and takes some getting used to on a purely practical level, especially with continuous performance. It is not to be underestimated how that will have been quite daunting and intimidating, I think, for Pertwee, and why Troughton was so good, because he was so experienced at it, and it's a very technical exercise, let alone what it then needs in terms of inventiveness and skill as a character actor to give it that extra non-mechanical dimension. So bravo, Pertwee. But I'm only ever going to choose for this episode, because I fell in love with it when my friend Andy showed it to me, as going, no, this is an example of why Ambassadors of Death is good. Of what a sequence. And I remember that in those sort of coming up next time, choose the episodes, we used to use the Mankind theme tune record to dub over. So we with two videos, we'd cut together these sort of clips packages, and I'd do a bit of a voiceover going, coming next time, choose, and we would offer, I think, 2 episodes from each of the first 4 Doctors, maybe the first 5, and then just 1 episode apiece from Colin and Sylvester, because there were fewer to choose from. So maybe, no, I think it was 2 from the first 4 and then 1 from the next. And people would, so they get 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 episodes to choose from, and they choose 3, and the 3 that won would be the episodes that we'd show the following month. And so I remember the 12-inch of Mankind's theme, and having that dubbed over and God, it was a primitive setup, but it was fun. We had a microphone and everything. It would be so easy to do now, but it was quite an achievement to do that in those days, having music from a record player that was dubbed over a video that also had a microphone feed in, where I would practice my fledgling voiceover skills to say, coming next month at the Doctor Who meeting or whatever in Willenhall in the West Midlands. It was the only dalliance I had with fandom, and it wasn't for a hugely long amount of time. I never enjoyed the sort of internecine wranglings. I've never liked sort of hierarchy or rivalry amidst Doctor Who fandom. It always seems a very silly thing to me. And there was a geographical element as well, because it was I lived miles away and was dependent on lifts from others. But anyway, it was down to them and this setup that I was introduced to the idea that Ambassadors of Death was perhaps rather underrated. And I'm pretty sure I saw, as I say, the opening, something took off from Mars and the thing, and then I think I saw that clip with Max Faulkner getting zapped. I think I'm much more familiar with those 2 bits than then watching the story as a whole a short while later. So that scene is very special to me because it was so well realized. There's it's a lot of scenes with Doctor Who I'd read about, I'd read in the books, or I'd had described to me, or I'd seen still pictures from. And then when you see them in reality, there's a compromise. They don't show as much as they do them. The monster doesn't look quite as good when it moves, or actually the still picture is not as accurate a rendition of what you see for various reasons. Whereas there were no pictures of this particular sequence. There's nothing in it to be a disappointment. It's a man in a spacesuit and a stuntman. I'd not read the book, so I didn't even know this scene existed. I knew the basic plot of Ambassadors of Death and what some of the characters were, but I didn't know the ins and outs, the nitty gritty, the blow by blow. So this was completely new to me, and it had so many extra dimensions. It had that lovely music, but mostly to me it was the silhouetted shot, which I think I'd read about, A.A. Englander's trademark sort of monsters against the sun, but seeing it in action with the lens flare. But then I think it was the touching, because I knew the ambassadors killed when they touched you, but I didn't know the kill transmitted along metal and, zapped somebody who's innocuously sort of, holding on to that as part of their job to sort of say, none shall pass or whatever. Yeah, Gandalf Faulkner. And the fact that, he's then sort of stuck there as the thing moves towards him. And that's a nifty, simple but nifty, spark effect going as a practical effect going across with the augmentation of the radiation zap that is put on afterwards. That's a very quick flash. And of course, in black and white, I had to imagine what that might look like in colour because I didn't have any angle on that. So there was a sort of unknown there as well, which gave it a little bit of a mystique. I wonder, what colour is that? What will that look like? Blah, 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 which again was only solved when I later saw it in colour. So there were layers to be added to it as well. But it is a nifty effect, just that quick flash, which does the business. It's an effect that works. It's simple. It doesn't jar. It seems to fit seamlessly with the action, even if it's being superimposed on film. It just works. It works because it's subtle and it doesn't outstay its welcome, but then augmented with the practical effect of the spark going along the thing and then him throwing himself backwards and the sort of impassive alien walking into the hail of the shooting as well, the gunfire as well. It's a magnificent sequence. It was surprising, it was action packed, it was pulled off perfectly in terms of how it's envisaged and how it was actually mounted and pulled off. I love that sequence. It means so much to me because it's just so exciting and great. And again, it doesn't really need to be there particularly, but it just works. And I remember first seeing it and it being thrilling, and I still love watching it today. So my favourite thing of episode 4 is the alien approach to space to the headquarters, to the base, where it kills, or does it kill Max Faulkner, or Max Faulkner Mark 1, as we will discover later. There's an issue there. As it advances in silhouette through the lens-flared sunlight, under a hail of bullets, augmented by the moody atmospheric music of Dudley Simpson, and all under the watchful eye of brilliant director Douglas Camfield. But yeah, also kudos to film cameraman A.A. Englander and Tony Lego. It will probably have only been one of them on that day, I'm guessing, but I don't know which one was working on that particular day. So, let's see what Mark Wright, lovely Mark Wright, chooses as his favourite thing from episode 4 of The Ambassadors of Death.
Episode 4 of The Ambassadors of Death. My favourite moment from this episode, and we're back to Michael Ferguson's direction, it's the sequence of the ambassadors arriving at Space Center. It's shot so beautifully. I imagine a lot of luck was involved in having the sun in just the right place for the cameras to shoot the ambassadors walking out of the sun, but it's such a dramatic shot, and it's coupled with more of Dudley Simpson's brilliant music. The music accompanying this scene is so unsettling. It's directed with such just a brilliant eye, and making the ambassadors so utterly terrifying. So again, this is a combination of different elements from the direction to the music to come together in brilliant fashion. But I think it's one of the most beautifully directed sequences in any Doctor Who episode from that period, if not the entire series.
Oh, blimey blinking heck. I love you, Max Faulkner, and your guardianship and demise under the radiation, the conducted radiation of the ambassadors, because that sequence, so special to me and so exciting to me, has brought me to be on equal points as we get to the... If this was a 4-parter, I'd only have the bonus thing, and I'd be in a chance of winning. As it is, unfortunately, I've got 3 more episodes to go. But how thrilling is this as we reach just over halfway? Well, it's the halfway point of things to choose, because we have 3 more episodes, so 3 things, and then a bonus thing. So of 8 choices, we're 4 in, and it's even Stevens. How exciting! And it's all because of that beautiful sequence, which I hope you love too. Do you know, I this is a rare thing. I'm watching this to do the commentary on it, and I've almost got a hankering to having done that, to actually then just sit and watch it for pleasure, because one so often forgets to do that in my position, which is like I have to watch a Doctor Who for research or for a commentary or for to prepare for an interview or to in order to write something, but to actually just sit and watch. And it's really unusual for me to do a commentary on one and then go, oh, now I'll watch it because I've just watched it. Why don't I watch one of the other Doctor Who stories that I haven't literally just watched and talked through? But I want to watch this and enjoy this because I'm enjoying it now. And I spent half of that wanging on about 4 words said in an English accent by an actor, and the repercussions of that in my own sort of mental. The sort of mental tumble dryer that exists between my ears, where I overanalyze. I'm so sorry. I was doing this yesterday. When I was overanalyzing something that happened, and then I have to sort of enunciate it to then dispel it, to then say, well, and then I did do that thing, but I don't feel like that anymore. But I can't just dismiss it. I have to sort of go into great detail about why I thought that, why I'm subsequently don't think that anymore, and why I was wrong to think that. And, it's all, oh, dearie me. I'm finding as I get older, life is a series of accumulated regrets that one has to be very careful not to fixate on, and to instead fixate on the stuff that one enjoys and celebrates and appreciates. And that is why I do this. It does mean occasionally I will then have a 5-minute segue into self-recrimination. That probably only means so. But I'm sure if your mental landscape is anything like mine, and I'm sure it is because you are Doctor Who fans, you will identify it with, if not this particular case, but our tendency to fixate on minutiae, and particularly on other people's reactions to things, and try to right the wrong of that. Whereas, of course, the way to sanity is not to worry about what other people do and think and say, and give them a break and go, they're just enjoying this in their way, and they might make mistakes in the way that they write it up or account for it or interpret it. But that doesn't matter. It's all part of this process of appreciating this wonderful thing that is Doctor Who. And at the end of the day, we all love it. And what I've discovered is the best way to love it for me, so that I don't spend my life accumulating regrets, is just to unashamedly enjoy it and to try and see the best in it, and to definitely, and I've always done this, I think, appreciate the work put into the making of it, and the efforts and the results of those efforts that still speak to us today, of people who, in this case, as we've discovered with the last episode, and nearly and 99% of this one, of people who are no longer with us, but their work still sings, and that scene still sings to me as it did when I first saw it, and I'm back to the teenage boy I was who first saw it, who found it was still possible to be thrilled by Doctor Who, and I'm a 50-year-old man who, despite my accumulation of regrets and woes and the torrid mental landscape that I struggle to navigate sometimes, well, when Doctor Who is my compass, I usually find a way through, because it's because I still have that thrill watching that sequence now, as a 50-year-old man who mixes his metaphors. Oh, I love the Ambassadors of Death. I'm loving the ambassador's reception that is being that it is receiving from the people watching along with me, and indeed from Mark Wright, who chose the same thing as me. We are in accord. Our ambassadors are synchronized, and I couldn't be more delighted. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. And my special guest enjoying the Ambassadors of Death is Mark Wright, who has come off Twitter, but he's been in contact to tell me that he's still on Instagram, and that's at mrwright, W-R-I-G-H-T, 2317, mrwright 2317. I'm grateful to Mark and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible. They include Nick Tedston, Tim Arding, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Peter Chamberlain, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelp, Paul Dunn, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Paul Harris, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Philip Marsh, Nathan Martin, Roland Moore, Rick Moran, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matti Cirillo and Frank Shales. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And I really am very grateful to the patrons because they have enabled me to get good recording facilities, to buy myself a little time to do these properly and produce them as professionally as one man in a cupboard can, but I think they sound all right. I've got decent equipment and I make sure I spend time editing them properly or putting them together properly. I mean, I don't edit out any of my ums and ahs. I like to think because you get the real thing, it's because otherwise the running time of the episode would be undermined, because I can't cut anything of the commentary because it would stop being in sync. Not that my 5-minute meanders into whether somebody's using a French accent or not was particularly synced with anything, but you get the general idea. Anyway, the patrons do vital work and it's really, really appreciated. I'm never going to get over the fact that of all the things people could choose to spend their money on, it's this stuff that I so enjoy doing. So I really am grateful to them. And if you would like to join their number, you can do so at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. It is only as little as £3 a month, and you can also get a 10% discount on that if you sign up for a year. Everything is available at the lowest tier in terms of released sort of audio content, and that is 6 months ahead with Happy Times and Places. That is a couple of episodes at least. Currently, I think 3 with Too Much Information, my Factful podcast, and a release or so ahead at the moment with Indefinable Magic, the one that's sort of whimsical essays, but I intend to get ahead with that again. I just need to have a proper week session where I get a load of those written up and banked, but you're generally ahead. And there's also exclusive monthly AMAs. That's been amounting to 2 or sometimes 3 releases. AMA meaning Ask Me Anything per month, plus another exclusive podcast, Far Too Much Information, which has the stuff that was too arcane even for too much information. Plus you get interviews with people who may be apposite to a story being covered in one of the podcasts, and trips behind the scenes to the various documentaries and commentaries that I've done for the DVD and Blu-ray ranges. So lots to be, as well as sometimes bits of my stand-up comedy as well. So lots of bits and bobs at Patreon, which you can support at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. You can also support via the Ko-fi model, which gives you no exclusives, but is a way of occasionally tossing a few coins into the profit hat of the busking creative that you've walked past in cyberspace on your way to the tube or bus or wherever. And that's ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. But there's a way you can support without having to do anything financial at all, and I totally understand that in these increasingly difficult times, and that's to give these a 5-star rating and a few lines of review wherever you get your podcasts. That'd be much appreciated. Well, Mark Wright is not the only one on Instagram. I'm there at toby.hadoke. I'm experimenting with putting videos up there as well, but you also get, again, a few pictures of, not as many as you get on the Patreon, but a few pictures of behind the scenes and various other Doctor Who things that I might be up to, but also videos and clips of my stand-up comedy and things like that. That's Instagram, toby.hadoke, at toby.hadoke. Unlike Mark, I am still on Twitter or X or whichever you want to call it. But if you call it X, I'll judge you. I'm very much in the Twitter camp. And that's at Toby Hadoke. These podcasts also have their own feed at Hadoke Podcasts. And I have a Facebook page as well. So if you want to stalk me on cyberspace, on cyberspace? No, it's definitely in cyberspace. You certainly can. And that's where various aspects of my work are displayed and proffered. And I also have a website with a blog, Toby at Toby Hadoke, www.tobyhadoke.com. And I suppose Mark's Instagram feed. It's Mr. Wright. It could be Mr. Wright. He could be being Mr. Wright. I don't know what Mark's middle name is. So it's either Mr. Wright. It was all small case as well. This is why we invented capital letters, everybody. This is why this, the destruction of our grammatical structures for the use of internet appellations is actually a degradation of our way of age-old and successful, and I would think elegant way of communicating. Anyway, I don't know if it's Mr. Wright or Mr. Wright, but the results are the same letters, all in small case, Mr. Wright, and whatever that string of numbers was. But is it Mr.? Is it Mr.? Who knows? More of a mystery, appropriate for the Ambassadors of Death, that most murky of programs. And I think there was a little bit of, if there was a little bit of tap, 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 if you heard a little bit of, I've just done, well, you're going to have heard that. I've just twatted the microphone, literally just hit the microphone. But I think it was sort of wobbling slightly. I've just tightened the string up and everything. And because I've got a slightly new setup, which I'm trying to make both comfortable but also out of the way in the house, I'm not sure there wasn't a bit of microphone wobble that made its way into that recording. So I'm sorry if so. It's not a thing that goes bump into the night. It's not somebody tapping on your bedroom window. It's not Heathcliff. You're not Kathy. It's also not interference a la undulating picture and sound as a result of difficult restoration and poor quality source material, which would be appropriate for the Ambassadors of Death. But I think I continue to make this not quite the full-on, totally pleasurable and perfectly rendered technical experience it might be, because I've managed to compromise the source material to an extent that there will always be a slight little bit of imperfection and even interference. I'd love to say it was deliberate, but sometimes it's almost like it's not nominative determinism, is it? But it's a Doctor Who story determinism. This story brings with it that kind of imperfection, and it seems to have been mirrored in the way that I'm putting together these particular commentaries, having done a perfectly decent job up till now, I have to say. I mean, there was a learning curve. I stopped eating crisps and things from when I started doing them in lockdown, which I thought added a certain reality, but actually made it really uncomfortable on the air. That did not occur to me. I'm just a bloke. I'm just a bloke on a sofa. But I learned pretty quickly, I like to think. Thanks for the feedback. Always like the feedback, especially to tell me not to do stuff like that. But anyway, so I'm aware if there is a slight issue with this. But let's say it's appropriate, eh? Let's say that the Ambassadors of Death courts that. And so you don't need to tell me. You don't need to go, there's a sub, because I don't think there's anything I can do about it. It's because the mic isn't exactly secure on the desk, and because I've had to sort of turn the desk round, it's not particularly secure because I've got it so that the lip's coming over the sofa, but that means that every time I move it wobbles slightly, and I think the microphone has wobbled, and if not caught the pop shield, I think just the actual momentum of the wobble and perhaps the stand on the tray has been enough to make a little bit of thud noise. So it's not a code. It's not Morse. It's not alien Morse code saying I'm an ambassador, help me. It's just typical of one, because there's so many things when you're putting about, unless you actually do it in a proper studio, but then I wouldn't be able to watch the episodes from the comfort of my sofa. Although actually it's not very comfortable, because the way that I've got the setup, I have to sort of lean forward and not move too much, or it wobbles. So maybe I should just do it in a studio with the episodes on an iPhone. Who knows? I'm thinking out loud. You don't care. You just want to listen to good quality commentaries, don't you? So why don't I perhaps... I sometimes think I need to show my working less. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, 'tis what it is. I'm really grateful you're listening. I'm enjoying doing Ambassadors of Death. I'm sorry if the past couple of episodes have had a few technical things that could do with tweaking, but in a way, isn't that kind of the point? And if you want a perfect Doctor Who podcast from me that's technically really absolutely smart, well then perhaps the BBC could make one and ask me to do it. But there we go. But for now, you have me at home in my home form, and and that brings with it, the noises of home. Sometimes it's a dog, sometimes it might be an ice cream van. Although I think my system is enough that I can keep out any ice cream vans. I certainly try very hard. Next door, they've got a coffee machine that they bang, bang, bang. They play the piano. And then yesterday, I think they've moved their radio. I was doing a voiceover for something yesterday, and I was about to tell Shez off because I thought it was coming from upstairs. No, it's next door. And I was like, do they know I do voiceovers? And they're really nice. We got on with them very well. They're lovely, but it's almost like every time I'm doing a thing in my little studio, there's a new noise that I have to overcome and compensate for. It's interference right from the very top. But anyway, yeah, so don't write in. I'm aware of the issues, and I always try and address them or iron them out or make it better for next time. But the recordings of the episode are kind of as live, so I'm sort of stuck with it. So please don't write in. And if you do write in, call me Mr. Hadoke, because I'm not M.R. Hadoke, because my middle name doesn't begin with an R. You'd have to call me, and my first name doesn't begin with M either, so it just wouldn't be an issue. Unless I was Taskmaster Hadoke. Oh, that'd be nice. Anyway, I was. You saw I was doing that. They call me Mr. Hadoke. They don't, but they call him Mr. Wright or Mr. Wright, which is right. Who knows? He's listening along, so he'll probably text me very soon and tell me, "Hello, Mark, Richard Wright." Why did I go for Richard? It could be anything. It could be Ronald. It could be Rudolph. It could be Rasmus. Oh, that's a good name, Rasmus. Well, I have a patron, don't I, called Risto Matti Sarillo. I think that's a wonderful name. But anyway, so who knows? Mark does, and he'll probably tell me. That's something to tune in to next time's post-credit sequence for, isn't it? I'll have forgotten. Short-term memory is always the first to go. Anyway, I was supposed to end on the call me Mr. Hadoke to tie in with how I started, but as usual, I've gone off on a tangent. But what I'll do is I'll do the last 4 words in a French accent in order to be inaccurately written up and cause somebody a sore head and unnecessary pedantry down the line many years later. Get out, gentle listener. Get out, Mr. Wright. Au revoir. Au revoir, mes amis.